Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. Just getting the last bits of sound and text sorted.
Perfect. You got a good posy there in that chair with that glass
I
of
know,
wine.
right? It's so cozy here. Yeah. Especially because, it's starting to get cold at night. So you wait, I'll have a blanket soon.
Perfect. Uh, how's it
Thank you
going?
so much for joining us. I'll just quickly explain setup. So I've got you on a lovely big screen TV here so that everyone in the audience can see. You can only see my mug at the moment, but I promise they can see and hear you. So everyone, I'd love a big round of applause to welcome George.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Wow, wow, wow. How have you been?
I've been great. I have to apologize before we start. I have to apologize because I've had my enemy today has been hay fever, and I've had such bad hay fever. So if I'm like sniffing and sneezing, huge apologies on that huge enormous screen that you've got. How awful! So apologies in advance.
That's okay. They're used to that from me up close. Why is it that we, allergy inclined people work in the dustiest of places?
Uh, Nothing like a theatre curtain, that's for sure.
Exactly. I'm just going to begin with the acknowledgement of country. We are so, so lucky to be able to come together on this beautiful Noongar Budja to share stories. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, this space where we are meeting this evening. The Menang people have been here for thousands of years, and the connection they share with this place we call the Great Southern runs generations deep. It is with respect that I acknowledge the Menang people and their elders, past, present, and emerging. Where are you joining us from at the moment, George?
I am joining you from the beautiful lands and waters of the Gadigal people. I'm in Redfern in Sydney at the moment.
Gorgeous. And you have been busy, busy, busy. I'm so impressed you can even form a sentence with allergy medication and all the events that you've had back to back. Tell us about them.
Oh, yeah, it's been an amazing couple of weeks. I had just a fantastic week at the Sydney Writers Festival, which was just such a huge dream come true for me, genuinely. Like, I've been going to that festival since I was a kid, and I go literally every year. It's around the corner from my house, which is great. But it really is just such a special event that is just enormous. And they run it, there's like 6 people in their staff pretty much. And it's just a tiny amount of people that just run this incredible world class event. And so for me to kind of peek behind the curtain and spend a week with all these incredible people that I've admired for a very, very long time was fantastic. And so I did a bunch of panels. I did a panel called Your Next Favorite Book, which is run by Michael Williams, who used to be artistic director of the festival. He picks a couple of books and talks to the writers. And then I did a thing called Queer Stories. They do that in Perth. Does Maeve Marsden ever go there? It's an event they do in lots of places where writers write a new story about themselves. It's true about their life. And it's just it's a beautiful event. It's moving and funny and joyous and heartbreaking all at once. So that was a hoot. And then I did an event called Theatre Kids, which is with a few other people who are also people that have worked in theatre that have written books in the last year. And so I did that as well, which was just really, really fun. So I was very lucky. And on top of it, I was like the festival blogger. So I wrote kind of 5 articles about different events and things, and interviewed Tara Jones, the writer for that, which was amazing. It was incredible to be in the green room and look to the table next to you, and there's like 5 Booker winners sitting around the table preparing the talk and stuff. It's wild. I have this photo. I'll show you this photo. I don't know if you can see this photo or not, but this is while we were preparing for Queer Stories and we were being silly theatre people. This was the table next to us who kept giving us side eye because we were being too loud. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like, can you see that? It's it's like David Saloy who wrote Flesh. It's Susan Choi. It's Roddy Doyle. It's Charlotte Wood. It's just this amazing bunch of
We've got like the adults in the room over there,
yeah, adults. Exactly. We're at the kids table.
and you guys are giggling and kicking your feet.
Pretty much. So it was really, really fantastic. I felt very lucky to be there.
It would have been so surreal to see it from the other side as well. Yeah. And
Fantastic.
I'm just coming back to 6 people like running it. That's incredible.
Yeah, maybe come more that, but it's like it's very small staff, and it's
Yeah.
yes, it's pretty amazing.
It's
And
fantastic to see the attendance at these events, though. Like, people might worry that, oh, books, people aren't buying books or reading books. It's like, nah, you look at these attendance numbers, it's bigger than ever.
this year was, yeah, bigger than ever, over 100,000 people, which is just so heartwarming. It's fantastic. And then I went to Bathurst, which is a place about 3 hours west of Sydney, and they have a writers' festival there, and they chose soft serve as what's called their Great Festival Read. And so in the months leading up, a lot of people in the town buy the book and read it. And it's like a sort of big town book club, which is amazing. And they put together this panel of these people from town who all kind of, like, one of them was a woman who was the Royal Fire Service captain of the area. Another one was like Lottie. Another one was a woman who used to be a school careers counselor, like Pat. And another was like a young queer guy from the community. And they all talk about the book. And it was just like so moving because I went to uni in that town. And it's been a special couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I actually wanted to quickly say, also a plug for next year. Our local library, they actually do like televise some of the panels from the Sydney Writers Festival, which is so awesome and such a good thing. If you guys do sort of, happen to catch it, they post it all up on their website, like the event listings and stuff like that. So you can pop it in your schedule if you've got a day off, because that's really cool. They show it on the big screen in there.
That's a great idea.
Like you're there remotely. So, Soft Serve, your debut novel. It's been a wild experience. Have you got a standout moment so far of the launch with Jordan Prosser and the touring process?
Oh, good question. The festival was definitely a highlight, but then also the Sydney launch was really fantastic. It was like we had the amazing Julia Zamiro host the Sydney one, and it was at a bar that I love in near where I live, and it was just so wild how many people came to this beautiful little event and just packed the place out. And it was just my partner was kind of joking. We're like, this is kind of like our wedding. Like it's just like everyone we know is here. And so to see that support is just like so lovely. And it really is very, very moving. So that was definitely a highlight. The Melbourne launch was great. The whole thing has just been something that's been really moving actually is like this amazing like Bookstagram community online where people just read all these books and have these big followings. And what I found so nice is this beautiful community between them all, and everyone writing to everyone and commenting on everyone's things and sharing book recommendations and all that kind of stuff is just is really, really nice to see. Any moment where there's like, yes, reading is alive is pretty special. So events like this are really, really amazing. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. And yeah, that's the thing with social media, right? We kind of villainize it, but at times it can be the most beautiful community, like facilitating space. And I think that's the gorgeous thing about books and reading and literature is that it's never, well, I'm sure it is sometimes, but it never really feels like rivalry. Like there is so much camaraderie and community and like collegiate mindset. You never really see like an indie bookstore pitting themselves against another indie bookstore. Like they're always sharing ideas and sharing resources with what works because they just love the community and love what it stands for so much.
I found that with writers as well, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Like other novelists have just been so welcoming and so generous, which is just, I think because it can feel a bit of a lonely process. I think whenever a writer gets love with another writer, it's like, oh my gosh, let's talk.
Yeah, it's sort of jarring stepping from that, like, as you say, kind of solitary process of creating this thing to then having to share it with editors and proofreaders and then going on to mentorship.
Yeah, it's a funny process, and you have this. The strangest part is, well, yeah. So you sort of work on this thing. I don't know. The soft serve was kind of 3 years from like starting writing to publication, which is sort of quite quick. And so you work on it for kind of, I wrote it for about a year and a half, maybe with this first draft to get a full first draft, and then it got picked up by UQP, and then everyone sort of told me that's then when the work begins, and you kind of go like, oh my god, that could be true, but it is. And then it moves to this publishing phase with the most incredible editors who are just like playing 4D chess. Like they are the smartest people. And I worked with this incredible editor called Ian C, who also you never meet, which is unusual. It's all done over email, all like we didn't even talk on the phone. It's really crazy. And he is amazing, and he would come back with a draft that he'd worked on, where it would be everything from big picture structure stuff to character stuff um, to punctuation to also like things like you've used the word little 75 times, and with the changes that I've suggested, it's actually like 19 or whatever it is. Or like he even wrote there's a bit in the book where Pat says the narrator says Pat only has cried once at work before on November something 2005 or something like that. And he commented on that and said, actually, that date that you've put was actually a Saturday, so Pat wouldn't have been at work that day. So it's just like this crazy detail.
Yeah.
They're an amazing resource and incredibly smart backstop for sure. So that collaborative stuff is really, really nice. And then there's this horrible kind of 6 or 7 months or so when it's gone to print before it comes out, where you kind of just second guess everything and you're like, oh, I should have changed this, or I should have put that, or could be better, or you think of something new that you wish was in there. And then it's that scary thing of then it going out in the world, and it's quite I don't know, it's quite embarrassing. It's quite an embarrassing thing to be like, this is as good as I think this can be, But it's very, very lucky to have gone through this amazing process.
Did you avoid the online reviews, or did you kind of subject yourself to them?
Yeah, I'm bad. I read them because I don't want I just like to know things, I don't want people coming up and going, how's it going? Like, and then having to know that there's something wrong. Like,
And like your mind can come up with like probably like I know my mind can come up with way worse criticism than anyone is probably ever gonna like say to me.
and I think you just sort of start to take them all. One review will say, I think it's a bit overwritten, and here's a line of why I think that. And then another review in an equally big paper will say, this was my favorite line. And it's the same line, So you just kind of go, okay, everyone's got their opinions. That's fine.
And no one reads the same book. Everyone brings their experience and every book they've ever read before that to that book, so that they never read the same one as well.
Absolutely. And I was lucky that there was a review in the Saturday paper, which was the first one, the first big kind of publication, and that was a really, really good one. And so I was like, okay, that allowed me to just kind of relax a little bit, to be at least, that's a good start.
Yes, yeah, Saturday paper is a pretty good one to have glowing feedback in.
Yeah, I was happy with that one.
Yeah. So how would you say that the launch process and that editing phase of process varied for writing a novel versus writing for screen and stage, because that was your background?
Yeah, playwriting especially. It's there's a lot of similarities. Just instead of working with an editor on a book, you're working with a dramaturg on a play. So that part of it is very, very similar. The bit that's different, I guess, is with a play you can get a bunch of people in a room together and read it all out loud and hear it all and hear the rhythms of it and everything like that, and get feedback and all those things. And that costs somebody half an afternoon to do that. Whereas asking somebody to read an entire manuscript of a novel feels like more of an ask of people. So I was quite specific about who I kind of asked to do that. And I sort of varied that across different demographics in the book. So I got, friends of mine who are 20-year-old queer people, or I had friends of mine who are 50-year-old mums or whatever. I kind of used those demographics to get readers to be like, is this working? Is this working? Is this working? And in a play, you kind of get that from just like 7 actors in a room anyway.
Yeah.
So it could work a little bit harder to get the feedback, I think. But apart from that, the process is similar, except that I wrote this in a very different way to writing a play, which surprised me as well. So if I'm writing a play, I'm very, very structured, and will kind of structure everything and build the house and make sure it stands before, and I almost know it like beat by beat before putting dialogue in. And then this was the total opposite. I started at the beginning and worked my way through, and it almost felt a bit sort of improvisational. Like it was like, what happens now? What happens now? And I loved it. It was really, really quite a joyous experience to do that. So I think that's something I'm going to take back to playwriting next time as well. To have that sort of faith that you're writing something, or you're putting something down on the page that might not quite make sense yet, but it might be a little breadcrumb for something that does later. And it's just sort of some gut instinct or something to be like, I think this might be important, but I have no idea why.
Yeah, having that faith in yourself and the creative process. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a process, that's for sure.
And what did it look like for you when you write? Like, are you just jotting bits down whenever you can? Are you like an hour in the morning with a Red Bull? Are you hermetically sealed room? No one enter?
Yeah, I've become good at knowing when I'm efficient and sticking to that, and not worrying that I'm not writing every day, or, I work full time at the Australian Theatre for Young People. So that already means I've got to be quite organized. But even if I wasn't, I don't know that I would like to write every day. A lot of people say like that's the secret, write every day. But if that's not your thing, then that's not your thing. And I find that a lot of this book was written between like 9 a.m. and midday on a Saturday at the Green Square Library. I really like getting out of the house. I can't kind of write in the house because I think I like the sound of voices, or it makes me feel like I'm going to do work.
Yeah.
And so I write a lot of things in my notes app in my phone during the week, and sort of build that up. And then I have a big spreadsheet as well of everything that I think of, and it all just goes into this huge Google Sheets. And it's surprisingly organized, actually, for me. And then that sort of fills up the bucket during the week, and then I feel like I can be really efficient during that 9 to 12 and just pour out the bucket onto the page.
Yeah.
And then not worry that I'm not running every day, because all of that time, I read some interview somewhere that was like, it's like John Cleese or somebody writing about creativity. And he was like, all of that stuff, all of that walking, all of that folding the laundry, all of that vacuuming the house, that's all work. It's all the brain's just kind of ticking away in that procrastination state. Yeah, any problems that need solving, there's something about the shower for me. Like I'm in the shower, it's like something about the steam or relaxed or something where it just like problems get solved there. It's probably too much information on the process. Apologies.
No, this is where I remember all the things I didn't do in that day. I'm like, that's what it was. I kind of want the shower, like misty bit to not fade, so that I can actually just write some notes down while I'm in there. That'd be so convenient. And also, I just think it's something about the cubicalness of it.
Right? Yeah,
like,
maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, it works. And I love the idea that you, sort of put it down, brought it to life, like in that library space, like where there's so many stories and creativity happening around you, whether it's people studying or like writing their own novels. You don't know what everyone's doing, but I kind of love
just kind of sustained, gentle human hum that I really like. Like on sometimes I'd go like Monday mornings as well if I wasn't working, and there's a kind of kids Mandarin class going on. I can just sort of like hear it in the background. I just like this kind of like being around people is useful for me.
Yeah. And speaking of stories, because I am a big nosy Nelly, what are you reading at the moment?
I am reading I'm going to Google who it's by. I'm reading a book called Rejection. Has anybody heard of this book or read it?
I can picture the cover. It's got like does that have a black cover?
It's like bluey, green, black. Yeah. And his name's Tony Tula Timuti.
Yeah.
And he's Thai American, I think. And I was around him a bit at the Writers Festival, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was talking to him, I was like, I think this might be like the smartest guy ever. And then this book is just like, it's so stressful And it's like a whole bunch of connected short stories all about rejection and loneliness. And it's very, very modern, sort of really like modern loneliness. And I had a friend who recommended it to me, and she was like, but I sort of started reading it in the middle seat on an aeroplane, and she was like, I couldn't do it. It was like too much, too stressful. I needed to like stop reading. But it's really quite an amazing book, actually.
Yeah.
And I've also just started reading this, who is this guy also was at the festival. He's like a Scottish poet,
Oh,
and he's
gorgeous
written
cover.
a book about he lost his friend. His friend was a musician, and his friend died. And this is all about kind of male friendship, but written by a poet. So it's really really beautiful.
So many fantastic books written by poets, right? Like I read the Olga Raven,
Oh, yeah.
the Wax Child, and it was just, oh, like the prose just flowed along. Like I could hear
Yeah.
someone reading it out loud to me, kind of thing.
Yeah, and the last year I went on a big like Irish writer bender for exactly that reason. Like Paul Lynch, I love, and Claire Keegan. Um, they're just amazing. I just love that kind of musicality that they've all got.
Have you done
But
any Sheila Armstrong?
no,
Ooh, that's my big wreck. She's an Irish author as well. She's done a short story collection and a novel, and both of them are absolutely stunning. But that sparse prose that Claire Keegan and so many other Irish authors do so well, that's so emotive and description. Like, yeah,
might
I
Google
put
them
it in
as
my top
well.
favorites.
Very cool. Great.
Excellent. And so obviously you have a massive passion for stories and books and reading. How did that come about? What was young George's relationship to reading?
It's a good question. I read a lot as a kid. I was read to a lot as a kid, and I think that has a lot to do with that as well. And then yeah, I remember being getting obsessed with books. Like I would read them over and over again. And then I had an English teacher in year 8 at school, um, who was just the most incredible. I read a article for it for Sydney Morning Herald and the Age in Melbourne about he was the first person that kind of really he taught us The Quiet American by Graham Greene, and he just taught me how to read for the first time. Like the fact that you know a character can be saying something and mean something else, or the fact that the place that a book is set can have a huge a really deep meaning towards adding to the themes of the book, or just like it sounds all obvious stuff, but as a kind of 13-year-old, realizing that for the first time with all of those things in a classroom setting was just kind of um, pretty amazing. And then since then, I was just like totally hooked. And then wrote a play for my year 12 um, major work, and then went and did a theatre degree. But it was definitely sparked as a kid, and then solidified in high school with that teacher. And there's so many writers that just have an English teacher who changed everything really, and just showed passion for something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That passion. And if you'd like to read that article, I have I have online stalked George extensively and posted that article in our Facebook group. Very easy access, guys.
I've just ruined everything. I've just said it all.
No, you haven't. That was, but yeah, I absolutely love that article and yeah, that passion, right? Like just, I think you phrased it something along the lines of, that thing that, I mean, I think you said teenage boy, but I feel like all teenagers are so averse to seeing from a grown up passion. You like don't know what to do with it when you're a teenager, but once you sort of like accept it, it just opens so many doorways, doesn't it? And then you become unapologetically passionate.
As a teenager, like passion is like the least cool thing in the entire world
Yeah.
until suddenly it's not.
Now, leading on from my nosiness, as you guys know, I love to find out the story behind epigraph selections. I love an epigraph. I do a little, like when you're eating something really, really good. I do that when I see an epigraph, especially if I'm going to interview the author, because I go, I can find out why. So Chekhov, wrote bajillion short stories and works. What made you pick? And I never know if it's Ivanov or Ivanov. What
I
made
say
you pick
Ivanov. I think
Ivanov?
everyone says something different. Yeah, I love an epigraph too. I think some people think they're a bit daggy, but I love them. It gives you, as a writer especially, it gives you like a clear little container to just always be like checking back in to be like, is this what I'm actually still exploring? Like, um, so I love Chekhov, and uh, the reason I knew that I wanted that to be the epigraph is because Chekhov is this master of writing about um, the life unlived. The ghost of this life unlived, and people discovering that they've lived the wrong love life too late, or they've living in the wrong place and now they're 80 and they can't leave. Like there's just something so moving to me about that. And also, I knew I wanted to write a book about that had a tone that was um, funny but sad, is a basic way to say it. And so I loved this quote, kind of is so deeply depressing, but there's something about the rhythm of it and the word goat in it and the simplicity of it that is like shit happens. Um, and I love the smashing together of things that are, whatever it is that's considered like high art and low. And I love this idea of the mythic and the mundane. And I love putting those two things together. And so I just kind of like the idea of like combining Chekhov with Macca's as well. And then I saw this amazing production of Ivanov at a theatre in Sydney probably about 15 years ago, and it still sticks with me that it's just so sad. And there's a character in it that has this line. It's like, I feel like I've been ripped off by life. And it's just so like, he has these sort of simple things that are just these deep wells of sadness and bathos. And when Chekhov's done well, it's really funny. And then suddenly you're crying. And so I love that. So tonally, it made sense for me. Thematically, it made sense for me. And there's a whole bunch of other sort of little Chekhov Easter eggs in there through the book.
For readers who maybe haven't dived into Chekhov, can you pull out a couple of those, even if it's just for them to look for on a reread?
Yeah, for sure. So one of them is in Three Sisters, play that Chekhov wrote. It's about these three sisters, and they're stuck in their sort of country home. Sounds awful, doesn't it? Stuck in their country home, but Chekhov uses bored, the word bored, like it's a swear word. Characters are like, I'm bored. But it basically means like, I want to end it all. And these sisters have this sort of refrain that is like, to Moscow, life, we want life. And so this book is kind of like to Sydney instead of to Moscow. Doesn't have the same ring to it really, but and then also in Three Sisters, there's a huge big fire in the town that the town kind of comes together to help fight as well. And so that kind of was a little echo. And then there's sort of stuff I've stolen from the Seagull as well with Fern, and instead of a seagull, it's an ibis. Fern says, I am the ibis, which is like a Nina line from the Seagull. And so stuff like that, even stuff that nobody even knows. There's a line that I stole from a acting teacher, a Russian acting teacher that I had once, who said, in Chekhov, I went to the accent, she goes, in Chekhov, we drink tea and underneath our lives break. And I just sort of stole that and made a Diet Coke in this town. But it's if you have the chance to read some of his short stories, they're amazing little just little nuggets that sort of start out so prosaically, and you feel like it gives you everything in the first paragraph, and then all of a sudden you're crying. And so I love it.
Have you seen the one-man production of Vanya that Andrew Scott did?
Yeah, it's perfect. Like 1 minute he's laughing, and the next he's got tears running down his face, eating cheese, and like, exactly that. It's beautiful. I love it, and that's the simplicity. Like the power of those stories is seen by the fact that one man on a bare stage can spend 2 hours telling us that story by himself. That's intensely moving.
and you can feel all the emotions in that time as well. Yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to watch that, there's now national theatre subscriptions. You can sign up like I did, and then we can talk about it. Goodbye, Netflix. So another thing that I want to sort of jump on, no pun intended, what was the spark for this novel?
Good one. The spark was I was thinking a while ago about a play. I was like, there's so many plays written for young people that are set in, like young people environments, like this, like a school or recess or tuck-shop line or whatever, and they're great. But I I was thinking about a play about young people at work because it's such a huge part of young people's lives. My like 13-year-old nephew works at the IGA in Bury, and you don't really see any stories about that.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of into my mind, but I was like, no, I wasn't quite right. I was thinking about maybe something about like a Macca's in the city on New Year's Eve or something, but wasn't quite right. And then I knew I wanted to write about grief. And so then there was something interesting to me about the grief being this longest process that we have, never ending really process, and that there was a sort of tension to me in exploring that in somewhere like a Macca's, which is by definition about the quick fix. And I thought it was something interesting there, and then thematically that kind of links with this generational tussle that happens in the book, which is another little pun of the title, that Pat thinks they're soft and Pat thinks she's here to serve, and so those two things came together, and a lot of writing to me feels like making connections between things that might not feel like they have connections. And so I had those two kind of things, and then it feels a little bit like there's like Netflix documentaries where there's like the suspects and there's like pieces of red string, like
yes,
on the inside of my head, sometimes feels like. And so I had those two things, and then the idea of the fire kind of came in as a kind of I've written about some climate stuff before, and I wanted to kind of explore that, and then also it was just a useful kind of tension device, really, in order to have these people really have to face their fears and not be able to leave. And then also the fires kind of had this ripple effect thematically of the scene with Jacob when he's fishing, and the spark lights this fire and how quickly that happens. I like this idea that something seemingly so lovely can so instantly wreak so much havoc, and I feel like that kind of mirrored a lot of their lives. And so I kind of liked that idea as well. And then those were the three things, and then it's about is there a story here? Is there a narrative engine that's going to drive the story? So it's about sort of starting to build that. But if I had sort of those three things, I feel like there's enough connections there to build something. Yeah.
Whose voice came to you first? Did you have one voice that came first?
Pat, actually, for sure. Although I wrote that prologue first without her in it, but definitely Pat. And that sort of came to because I heard this story about in Bury, where my family live on the south coast, small town. There's this woman there who runs the IGA, and all the young kids that have worked there are like, oh, she's so mean, or she's so scary, or like she's a bit sort of like very hard on them. And then I heard this story that that she lost her kid. Her kid got hit by a car outside the IGA and died. And I was just like, oh, and then like putting these two things together, these kids don't know that, and they're just seeing this, external grief, and inside there's this person just kind of trying to put one foot in front of the other and not having time for a young kid being like, I want to be on my fight, like.
Yeah.
But that kind of was a spark for me with Pat as well, that she's, got a really good heart, but it's covered in barbed wire a little bit because it has to be.
I loved that Pat's voice, in comparison to the younger narrators' voices, like it provided so much of that sort of heart and that humor, because you get to hear the dialogue and you get to hear her internal thoughts of, like, I loved the one that stood out to me. I just sort of, you know, when you're reading and then you sort of flip back and you go, oh, because you're still thinking about that thing that you've just read, was where she's like, I just cry all the time. Like, I loved that, because it wasn't coming from a place of harshness or anything like that. She was just so bemused by how overwhelmed they were by life.
And at YP, I work with, I work with people that are Fern's age or whatever, and I've seen people in meetings that age cry because somebody said, like, I can't. Can you speak louder? I can't hear you. Like, there's so many, and I sit in this funny. I just turned 39, and so I kind of sit directly between these two generations in this book. And as I sit with my sister, my sister's 10 years older than me, and I have nieces and nephews. And there'll be something where, there's tension between them about something, and I can 100% see why my sister thinks what she thinks, and I can 100% see why my nephew thinks what he thinks. And it's just this funny little spot where at my age. And so that's what I hoped in this book, is that, neither of them are right or neither of them are wrong, because they both got their reasons for believing why they think that. It's true.
Yeah, and I think that came across so well. Was that because that's obviously not always a way that you would get to communicate with an audience in like play format, for example. Is that something that you like took a lot of joy out of being able to deliver those different perspectives in that novel format?
Yeah, I actually found that's actually probably the thing that I struggled with the most, was just learning how to do different POVs, because the editor of this book, I think, I drove them crazy nearly. Like, they actually taking a year off this year, and I'm really worried that it was my fault because it's so annoying. But yeah, in a play, obviously, who has POV because of the person that you're watching talk. But here, it's very containing what somebody can take in, and therefore what you can write. So I would write things not really understanding how it works, that Pat obviously couldn't see or know, but that something up here could. And so I found that actually a huge challenge to figure that out. And I don't know how people write books that it's just one POV the whole time, because I really been able to delve into these kind of wells of emotion with all of these different characters. I liked it a lot.
Would you adapt soft serve for the screen or for the stage?
If someone asks me to, I would love to. I would love to. I would love to turn into a film. I feel like I feel like why I would love to see it as a film. I mean, it could work as a play as well, but it would be tricky to do as a play, because it's actually not. Plays actually do require more action than people think. Like, every review, I kind of regret putting playwright on the back of the thing, because every review is like, this would be a great play or whatever. But it's actually not as contained as it appears to be. And plays often do require a bit of action, whereas, there's a film version of this where it is super, super contained, but then also there's Michael Bay helicopter shots of the fires, or, like.
Yeah. Or like that scene by the river fishing.
Yeah, like
that gives so much. Yeah.
That really quite visual sense of scale. I would love to kind of explore that. But so if anyone knows anyone,
spread the word, hit up your contacts. I feel like it's so exciting seeing some more, Australian film and television happening as well, like the post-COVID kind of, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm seeing more of it, or, seeing local-ish WA, like, some films have been done partially in Albany, like, over the last few years, and things
my
like
friend's
that.
shooting a series in Perth at the moment, having a great time. There's so much stuff filming in Perth at the moment.
Yeah, very exciting. It's great to see. I don't know, not a resurgence, that's not quite the right word, but it kind of feels like it's something that we need to like foster. So yeah. All right. Bit of a jump again, because I've gone on a tangent, unlike me. So I want to touch back on Pat's character and the way grief is sort of explored in the novel, because you do this really, really clever thing where it feels like the characters are in limbo. They're stuck between, as you say a few times, the tight orbit of small towns, which we all know that, right? Like the really, you come back, you keep coming back because someone has a baby, or you've got a grandparent who's getting older, or it's that really tight orbit. And so these characters are sort of stuck between to Sydney, but also this time limbo that is grief as well. As we said before, like it's not a state that ever really ends. And so they're sort of reflecting each other. I kind of want to talk about the creative process behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that grief is just such an interesting thing to write about and to read about. And I even feel like almost every book, every story is like, to me, is like about grief or the fear of, and the connection of that and the small townness of it. Um, you know, the the container of a small town is useful in exploring this idea as well, because it's the pros and cons of all that. There's community and everyone understands, and these people in this Macca's know what everyone else is going through intimately. But then there's also this kind of negative theatricality to it, almost, in a small town, that everybody knows everybody's business, and it doesn't, by no means are emotions in small towns made small. They're actually kind of bigger because they're pushing against something, and whether that's a kid, wanting to find someone who's queer like them and not being able to do that, or whether that's a kid wanting desperately to go somewhere else, or like Fern, or like Jacob, like being like comfortable where they are and knowing how to navigate that, because life is scary, full stop, let alone like jumping out of the nest that you grew up in to go to an enormous city and basically start again at 22. For a lot of people, that's the one thing that they would love more than anything, and for some people, that's the scariest thing you can possibly do. And so, again, it's just, I heard this great interview with Ian Rickson, who's an amazing playwright. I listened to it actually. Jez Butterworth is an amazing playwright, and he keeps saying in the thing, he's like, everything has to mean two things. Everything has to be two things. Everything has to be two things. And so it's like that. Whenever something has a duality to it or an antithesis to it, there's going to be something interesting. And small towns, I think, are a really, really good vehicle for that. And grief is a really good vehicle for that. So together, hopefully there's something combustible.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was something that we were really drawn to as well, because Albany doesn't have any traffic lights. If there was any installed, we'd flip a table, wouldn't we? There'd be rallies, there'd be marches down the main street about a set of traffic lights put in.
I mean, so many people have picked up on that line, and when I wrote it, I was nervous about that, because like at no point do I ever want it to feel like I'm shitting on small towns. It's like the opposite.
No, I think
we can about that line in particular, and then that is the line that everyone picks out. That whenever I talk to people in smaller towns, that's the line that they go like, "Oh, I love this." I'm like, oh, God.
We're all patriotic in our own way, aren't we? We're like, yeah, we don't have any of those. But I also loved like the way that you described the chain of, and I can't get the quote right, but the chain of fast food stores as
fast food alley.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and kind of likened it to to like a Las Vegas almost of sorts with the neon lights, and how that those places are places of community for people that are underage, like a pub or a really nice bar and restaurant where the book club gathers once a month. Like those same spaces, because I hadn't thought of it like that. I had completely missed. I grew up on a farm. We didn't ever go to fast food places, too far out. And so I kind of missed that as that community space, and I loved seeing that. And I feel like that's another thing that kind of like small town, your love of the small town did show through.
I'm glad.
So another way I want to connect the grief in as well is how they all experience it differently. And, you know, there's this thought process recently how in the way that we experience grief is changing because we've become so separate from death and the extreme medicalization of it. You know, we don't really look after people when they're at the end of life. It tends to be, unless you're a nurse, like plenty of the nurses here, but we're kind of removed from it, and that how that changes how we grieve. Do you feel like we also see that in the different ages of the characters in it? Like the way that Pat experiences her grief is different, not just because she's Taz's mother, but also because she is that next generation on?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I like the idea of putting Pat as the person working in the Maccas because to me, she's like the person that is doing the most work in terms of her grief.
Yeah.
And I guess, yes, she does have that kind of like age perspective, which is interesting that, um, you know, for someone like Ethan, maybe this is by far the biggest thing that he's had to deal with, along with everything else in life, you know? Um, and so I don't know, there's, you know, with Pat, the way that Pat is kind of dealing with that, you know, this idea of like they cry all the time kind of thing. Like for Pat, that's a blessing and a curse, you know, like that it's, you know, her like roll her sleeves up, get on with work, she'll be right kind of thing. That has its place and that's amazing. But she's probably not of a generation where, you know, it's also fine to like feel all your feels, you know, like the younger people are. And there's positive things in that as well, you know. So who's to know when they grow up and they become Pat's age, the way that they process that grief in that way might be a good thing. But yeah, it's never ending, you know. Like I got an email from someone a couple of months ago in my inbox that had the name of somebody that I knew from school, a friend of mine that had died from school, just after we finished school. And it's just like, you feel like, you know,
Yeah.
you're over it, and then suddenly something happens and it just like, it takes you back there. It's like full snakes and ladders.
Yeah.
And so I think that generation thing is interesting, but it's time will tell, I guess, how their grieving affects their life.
Yeah. And there's also sort of again that kind of like, you know, you've got the fire as you said, as a tension element, and it also kind of serves to kind of provide that really macabre sort of ominous feeling that I think you have when you're experiencing grief as well. It's kind of unsettling.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a really particular type of tension. We had the 2025s in on the south coast in Sydney too, which where my family is, and then you know we're packing up our sister's house, and it's such an unusual thing. And the fires in this book are kind of also purposely a little bit peripheral, and it feels like, you know, I wouldn't even call this really a climate fiction book. There are a lot of people that write that stuff a lot better, but that I kind of wanted that on purpose too. That's kind of what it's like now. You know, it's something that we know is out there all the time, especially over summer, and it's happening on the news, and you kind of see it or you scroll past it, and it sort of is just this thing that's happening in the background all the time until suddenly it's not, and then it's horrific. Uh, and you get those crazy images of people with their cows in the ocean or whatever it is, you know, and everything just feels like completely topsy turvy. And so I think that sense of kind of foreboding is, yeah, exactly right. There's links there between those, that sense of dread, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Was there ever a time when it was like more overarching? You know how you're sort of saying it's on the periphery and it's not as much as it's periphery because it's everyone's lived experience now. It's not necessarily what you describe a climate fiction book. Was there a time when it was more of a presence and through the editing it got pulled back a bit? Or
It was, there was at the start there was only one Lottie section to kind of sense of the town, and then the editors wanted more of that to give it a sense. And then the other thing they added in was those party scenes of Pat's 50th birthday with Taz. They added those in as well. Well, I added them. It was their idea to add them in, to just get a sense of like what it is that he meant to all of them individually, and then as a result, what it is that has been lost. So that was their idea to add more of that in, which is great.
Yeah, kind of those zoom out moments, right? Yeah.
And I think it'd be too, like, it's too close quarters for nothing to happen, and we need those little breaks, I think, in the story.
Yeah, yeah. So in your book club notes, I noticed that you had some book club notes up on UQP, which I loved because I also saw book club notes for The Sitter.
Yeah.
I adore, love that book. Is that like quite a big thing for UQP, or is that just a coincidence? How
No,
does
they
that many
they
other
do
publishers
a
do
lot
it?
of their books. It's such a great idea. It's just such
Yeah.
a good. And I think I wrote them. I can't remember. I think I wrote them. Um, uh, yeah, and it's just a great way to kind of guide conversation and also just put in little bits that readers might miss or skim over, and get people talking about big decisions in the book or anything like that. And I think it's a really, really great idea.
And there's so many private book clubs, like, I mean, I don't even know how many book clubs there are in Albany. I think there's like 60
Oh my god.
in Albany. Like, it's massive. And there's such a handy resource because sometimes you do want to, think about things a bit differently. So if you guys pick a UQP book for your own other book clubs, check out the website to see if they've got book club questions. And then I'm going to turn one on you. So one of the questions was to ask readers to pick one image from the book that stayed with them and why. And I'd like to know what your answer would be.
Good question. I like the image of um, I like the image of Jacob fishing. I like that kind of as a reset, and to give a bit of scale. And I also um, love the image. It's a weird one, but I love the image of Pat talking to Jacob outside in the harsh lights with the banana bread on his head.
A banana bread ice pack.
Banana bread ice pack with this like dripping sound and these ibises and this ominous kind of thing, and she's just giving him, she's mothering him, which means so much to both of them. And I like that, like when scenes like that of meaning happen in unusual circumstances. What I want to know other people's.
Everyone, do you have one? Does anyone want to volunteer? I quite love the when Fern is talking to, I've forgotten his name, but talking to one of the other volunteer firefighters.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're kind of consoling each other and both kind of feeling their grief. I love that because there's one point where like her head's down on the table, and I loved that. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but that one
Take off that
stayed with
makeup.
me. Yes, yeah. Does anyone else want to holler out? The gum tree catching on fire. Yeah. But it stayed with you. Yeah. Anyone else? The death scene of Pat. Yeah. Yeah. Very visually powerful. Yeah. And sort of, yeah. And even just the power pole like coming down onto the car. That was really, yeah. Yeah. And like the van on its side, those awful, caravanners, but then the van on its side as they're driving out. Well, no. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Yes, Pat going down the slide. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And they are so awkward to clean. That's a good one. Anyone else? All done? I'm feeling quiet. Feel free to submit them to me. I can send them through to George. I'm conscious of time, so now I'm going, which ones do I want to cherry pick out? Okay, the cover, because we've already talked a bit about how the process of writing and editing is collaborative. Josh Durham did the cover. Was that a collaborative process? Like, was it sort of presented to you and you're like, yep, bada boom, bada boom, that's it? Or were there a few options?
It was presented as is, pretty much. And I took to be honest, I love it now. And it took a little while to warm to it because it was quite different to what I kind of had in my head. And when you've got 3 years to think of something, you become attached to those ideas. And so I was a bit taken by it, but it's just so beautiful that I couldn't help sort of start loving it. It's actually it's an old like Dutch painting of Australia in like the late 1800s or something. And he's taken it and then like added the street lamp and everything to it. But I really like the receipt too. I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it works really well with that idea of like the smashing together of the high and low, which I love. There's this beautiful kind of, oil painting with fire and then a receipt stuck to it. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah. Did you initially have the bin chicken as more of a motif in a cover?
I did just in my mind, I was like, maybe that. But then there was, there's been a whole like in the last like 3 years or so, there have been a few books that have had ibises on the cover.
It has been, yeah.
And I was like, oh, no, we don't want that anymore.
We're doing new stuff here.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so the plan. George, would you be willing to read out a passage?
Sure thing.
That would be magnificent. And then after that, we'll go to any audience questions. I'll give you a bit of time to brew up any questions I may have missed. And we'll do that after George's reading.
Which bit should I read? I should have thought of this. Actually, I'm going to read. Sorry. I thought I knew I was going to read, but then I've changed my mind. I'm going to read.
There's that rain. I can hear it on the roof. It started now. Hope everyone brought their brollies. I've got my rain jacket shoved up the back there. My sister was like, you're going to need it.
Okay, I'm going to read this bit. This feels weird, Fern says, having to raise her voice over the gathering wind. Everything feels weird, Jacob replies, his voice straining too. Remember when we had to mow the lawns? She asks. It was just after their dad, Rick, had left abruptly. He'd found someone fresh and bold with a loud voice 2 towns over. He erased his old life like he was shaking an etch-a-sketch. Fern recalls sitting in the back of the car in this very car park when Angie told them their dad had left. The rain dribbled down the windows and the windscreen wipers pounded and squeaked. The heat from the bottom of Fern's Happy Meal seeped into her lap. She was 8 and Jacob was 10. Their puffy jackets were zipped up to their chins, and Fern wasn't quite sure what was more important, what their mum was saying or that the server had forgotten to put tomato sauce in their paper bags. But just because something had died in that moment, it didn't mean the lawn stopped growing. In the following weeks, as Angie lay on the couch, Fern and Jacob would mow the lawn. Their neighbour, Ron, with his perpetual frown, had lent them his mower. The grass is long, he told them, so I've taken the catch off. You'll have to pick up the cuttings yourselves, and don't you let it blow into my garden, all right? Fern remembers watching Jacob's skinny arms pulling the cord a dozen times to start up the mower. He looked so angry, she thought. He would push it around the lawn, back and forth, staring straight ahead, and Fern would follow along in the wake, cleaning up his mess. She would bend down and put as much grass into one of those big red, white, and blue bags as she could. A fool's errand. Her face and hands mere inches from the whirling blades.
Thank you so much. Oh, the etch-a-sketch, the heat from the Happy Meal soaking into her lap. Fantastic. All right, I'm going to sneak one more in for you guys, actually. What's next for you?
I am working away early days on potential book number 2, which is very exciting. I probably shouldn't say too much about it, but the setting. I went when I did the Melbourne launch. I went and visited outside of Geelong, there is Australia's only remaining ostrich farm, which is random. And so that's kind of all I can say now is that I think there's a setting that is ostrich farm, and I think it's about trust, and lack of trust in experts now, and what happens if everybody's shouting and nobody's listening. How do we get heard, and what happens if no one trusts anyone?
Yeah. God, you're so good at pairing something that makes me think deeply and something that makes me giggle. Like Hackers and Grief, and then Ostrich Farm, and this whole like anti-intellectualism crisis. Like well, I'll read it. I'm sad.
Intellectualism ostriches. There we go. That's the byline.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, you had me with Drive-Through Chekhov, so done. Bada bing, bada boom. Thank you so much for joining us, through the Zoom tonight. It's been such a pleasure to be able to read your beautiful, beautiful book and share it with these fantastic readers. And I can't wait to keep, nagging people about it, basically, in a really nice way.
I want to say thank you to all of you as well. Thank you so much for reading this book. It's like there's so many things and distractions and ways people can spend their time, and sitting down and reading a book is no small thing. So I just really appreciate you giving this book your very, very valuable time in this world. So thank you so much for reading it and taking the time to come here and talk about it. And between us all, we can make the world a slightly better place through reading.
There's hope. There's always hope. Alrighty. Thank you so much, George.
I made it the whole. I made the whole hour.
Finale. Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock. It's 9:04. So
nailed it.
Thank you so much. Wonderful questions, Lisa. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you too. Bye.